I've helped 400 plus men online get to 10% body fat and teach them how to sustain it year round using this exact strategy. And in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through our fat loss strategy from A to Z and show you exactly how it's done. So this is a comment off one of you guys, one of my subscribers, that says, can you show what the cut looks like after the metabolic priming phase? I'm almost reaching the 3,000 calories and seeing great results. Would love to know what to do next. So if you haven't seen this video, get caught up on that video because I walk you through how to boost your metabolism with metabolic priming. But in this video, we're gonna go a step further. I'm gonna show you the exact mechanism of how you can structure your cardio, your food intake, and the adjustments that you make each week, and so that you can reach 10% body fat sustainably, right? And so the biggest things we're going to take away from this as well is I'm going to go through some key takeaways to remember, but we're going to lay this out step by step. And this is the exact strategy that I've used with 250 men in just the last 6 months alone. So if you guys don't know me by now, my name's Adam Bunnell. I'm an online fat loss professional, and I specialize in metabolic priming, which is a process of metabolism manipulation. So I'm going to show you exactly how we structure our cutting phase, but this happens after the metabolic priming phase, right? So in essence, metabolic priming is increasing your food intake and adjusting your metabolism to later on be able to take more calories from your actual fat loss phase, right? So the higher the calories that you have, the more that you can take away, which allows you to have less refeeds, more sustainability, less hunger, and overall just allows you to stay leaner because you're not low carb dieting, right? Because where I see a lot of men go wrong in today is that you probably are one of the guys who has tried keto, carnivore, low carb diets, and you've gotten to the point where you can almost get all of that body fat off besides the last very two, and then you just gain the weight right back. And so I'm going to teach you exactly how to do this structurally and so you can do it correctly, okay? So anyways, getting into this video, the first thing I want you to understand is how we actually map this out. So keep in mind that we have mapped this out using an actual blueprint of decisions that we make as coaches for our clients to know what direction to head next and what decisions to make with each particular client, right? So it all revolves around metabolic priming, right? Hormonal priming and body recomposition. So as our clients come into the program, what we do is get data collection, data calculations, data implementation, and then we start them off with a metabolic priming phase. And so in the metabolic priming phase, the goal is to do no cardio, add some walking steps in there in the form of low intensity cardio to keep digestion flowing, but then get these calories up as high as possible before we start any cardio and lower any food. This means that we're optimizing your BMR, right? We're optimizing your basal metabolic rate so that you can eat more calories, have a higher metabolism, which means it's easier to overall diet, right? So once we do correctly do the metabolic priming phase, and like I said, I have tons of videos on my channel about metabolic priming, how it really works, we then go into a fat loss phase, right? And so the overall goal with the fat loss phase is to, one, lose body fat, not lose muscle tissue. And a lot of guys will go wrong because they will lose a lot of weight and half of it is muscle tissue. What happens when you lose muscle tissue? You actually lower your metabolism, right? Because metabolically, muscle tissue is very active metabolically. So we want to be able to maintain as much muscle tissue as humanly possible. So we're just in the game of fat loss. And that's what separates us from everybody else on the internet right now, because we are interested in fat loss, not overall weight loss. If you want to get to elite level composition like one of my clients right here, then you have to understand weight loss versus fat loss. Weight is a very relative number depending on how much muscle mass you have, overall cortisol inflammation, and a lot of other leading factors as well. So we're in the game of overall fat loss, all right? So basically, our subscriber said that, can you show me what a cut looks like? I'm at 3,000 calories right now. So the biggest and most important thing, so we can start this guy off at 3,000 calories, is that we need to understand our overall macronutrients, right? And to structure your overall macronutrients, the things that you actually need is basically your height, your age, and your age, right? Your age and your height. That's basically where it comes down to, because we want to understand where we should start each other off at, because your weight is going to be depicted on a lot of factors about where your protein's at, where your carbs at, where your fats are at. And so let's just, for the sake of time, let's just take a 200-pound male, right? And so you guys can do this on your own. Write this down, get out a piece of paper, because I'm going to give you all the sauce right here. So a 200-pound male. So how we calculate protein is basically 1 to 1.2 times your body weight. So to keep it simple, we'll just do 200 protein, right? For fats, we do 0.3 times your body weight. So if we go up to the calculator up here and we do 200 times 0.3, we'll get 60 grams of fat, right? So 60 grams of fat. So the next thing we have to understand is, all right, what should we do? How do we find our carbs? And this is actually very simple, right? So what you will do is you'll take 200 times 4 plus 60 times 9, right? And what that is basically grams of calories per gram of protein, calories per gram of fat, and that will get you, and we can do this right here, right now, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do this. We'll do 200 times 4, which equals 800, right? So 800, we'll put this up here. And then we'll do 60 times 9, right? 60 times 9, right? So it's 540. So plus 540, right? So that equals, let's see, 1340, right? 1340. So what we want to do now is we want to subtract 3,000 from 1340. And why is that? Is because we want to find the overall calories it takes for carbohydrates, right? So 3,000, and I'm just going to do this for you guys live so you know this is real. 3,000 minus 1340, right? So 1660. So next we do 1660 divided by 4, right? 415 grams is your overall carb because there's 4 calories per gram. So your carbohydrates would be 415. Right? So those would be your overall starting macronutrients. And I think this is probably the most important factor that we teach in the program is that the macronutrients are everything, guys. The macronutrients are everything. The macronutrients give you structure because calories affect your weight. Macronutrients affect how you look. They affect the cosmetic appearance of your body, and they affect a lot of hormonal markers, right? And so we need correct macronutrients. It doesn't matter what you're tracking. If you're not tracking the correct protein, carbs, and fats, you're not going to make great progress. The protein, carbs, and fats are where the composition of your body lies, right? So let's kind of take this for example. 200 protein, 415 carbs, 60 grams of fat, and this is just going off a 200-pound male. So the first thing we need to understand, the rules to abide by, only make changes once per week. Make simple, small changes once per week. So we could start this guy off in a fat loss phase, and we would start him off at the very beginning of the cut. We might start at like 75 gram minus of carbohydrates, right? So let's do that, the math for that. And let's just kind of, let's round it to 400 just for making it easy on overall calculation perspective. So like if we did 400 minus 75, so 325 would be the overall starting macronutrients for this cut. And then cardio, we would do this. We would do cardio. We would do 130 to 140 heart rate because we want a heart rate range for our cardio to make sure we're optimizing these zones of cardio. Then we're going to do 4 times 25 minutes, right? So 4 times weekly, 25 minutes. And that would be the starting cardio sessions, right? So step 1 is we would wait an entire week. So basically, the first thing we want to understand, I'm going to kind of walk the things to remember as I walk through this so we can all be on the same page. The first few weeks until your body turns over the inflammation, your weight might hold. This is completely normal, and I can't stress this enough, is that when you start your cutting phase, you might not see much progress within the first 2 to 3 weeks. Why? Is because we're waiting for your body to adjust and transition to properly optimizing, reducing that inflammation. Because we're putting a new stimulus. We're lowering the amount of food intake that we're having, and we're raising the amount of cardio. So we're putting new stimulus on the body. So I would wait 2 to 3 weeks before you even make any sort of change and monitor your body composition and monitor your weight. This is completely normal. This happens with every single one of our clients, and I have to explain that very clearly that, hey, listen, for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it might take your body a 2 week to 3 week period to finally transition over and start actually burning off body fat, right? So new low weigh-ins are awesome, but body composition is what matters the most. So you could still gain muscle tissue in a calorie deficit. With a high protein goal of 1 to 1.2, you can still gain muscle tissue. So while you're in a cut, in some cases, as you start to get more energy, start to optimize everything a little bit better, you can actually gain muscle tissue and lose body fat, which means there's not going to be much changes on the scale. So I urge you guys, take progress photos once per week. You know, for my clients, they check in once per week, let's say on Monday. On Monday, we make changes. We analyze the data and we make changes, right? So for you guys who want to do this on your own, do that same thing. Make changes once a week on one certain day and don't make changes other than that. Because if you start to change too many variables at once, you don't know what variables are making the immediate change. So the next is managing stress and cortisol. Sleep recovery is important as training and dieting when you're in and cutting to manage inflammation and bodily cortisol, because cortisol will quite literally hold your weight. They will hold a lot of your weight and it'll accrue a lot of water retention, right? Let's think about a night, for instance, that you stayed up all night, you woke up the next day, you feel like a little bit watery, just like entirely fatigued. That's raised levels of cortisol, and cortisol can show up as weight on the scale. So like in a lot of cases, when you get poor sleep, you're not getting great sleep, you can weigh up a little bit more in the next morning and just overall water weight, and you could think, oh no, I'm gaining weight, and you could lower your calories, and now you're detrimenting yourself and making the cut a lot harder on your body. So it's all about understanding the changes when to make, right? So sleep and recovery is just important. Not only psychological, but also physiological stress go hand in hand. Understand, and this is what I teach my clients, understand as a human, you have limited resources. You have limited time, availability, attention, focus. You have only available energy. And so you have to understand when you're in a cutting phase to utilize that limited resources correctly, right? So we want to make sure we are optimizing sleep. I make all of my clients sleep at least 6 to 8 hours a day to manage cortisol. So anyways, let's kind of get right into how we would make these body composition changes. So the first step, after we wait that first 2-week mark after implementing the first cardio and lowering macronutrients, if you see no changes after the first 2 weeks, so I'm going to put this in here too, actually, after the first 2 weeks of starting the cut. After the first 2 weeks of starting the cut, if we see changes, then don't change anything, right? If we are seeing visible changes within your body, do not change anything. That is most important, because remember, we're in the game of losing body fat, not losing weight. So if you're leaning out, you're seeing more striations in your stomach, more striations in your arms, don't change anything, right? Because first of all, you have to understand that fat loss occurs from the top down. So you'll start to feel face start to lean out, upper shoulders start to lean out, upper back start to lean out, before you actually start to get rid of like the midsection, right? And so that's why they call it the stubborn belly fat area, because the bottom of your abs is usually the last to really go, okay? So if we don't see composition changes, go to step 2. Are we down 0.5 to 1.5 from the previous week? So if the first 2 weeks, we are down 0.5 to 1.5, make no changes, right? The goal with fat loss is 0.5 to 1.5 pounds per week, right? If you're within that range, there's nothing that needs to be changed, right? Because some weeks you might weigh in just 0.5 down, and you keep it going another week or two, and then all of a sudden you'll wake up 3 to 4 pounds down within a week, and you'll be like, what just happened? And a lot of that is your body adjusting, your body getting accumulated to the new cutting phase, right? So like, are you down 0.5 to 1.5 pounds from the previous week? Yes, no changes. Do not change anything. I can't stress this enough, is that like, we have to think about cardio, steps, and calories as a limited resource for your cut. Those are the only 3 driving factors we have in your entire cut. How much cardio you do, how much steps you do, and how much you lower your food. So if we are jumping the gun and starting off down here, we're already missing a bunch of progress that we could have had, and we're already cutting your metabolic rate even lower, because the quicker that you lower your calories, the more your BMR is going to drown out, right? And so the biggest thing to remember is make small changes and be patient, right? If you're within these KPIs, within these metrics, don't change anything, right? No, if we're not down 0.5 to 1.5 pounds, food decrease 100 to 200 calories, or cardio increase 10 to 15 minutes, okay? So let's see what this would look like. So we go into the second, third week, and we've kind of hit that plateau where our body composition hasn't changed. We're not down 0.5 pounds. The next thing we would do is we would either, don't do both, we would either lower the calories or raise the cardio. So what this would look like is 100 to 200 calories is basically 25 grams of carbohydrates. So what I would do is I would just simply lower the carbohydrates 25 and then wait another week, right? Wait another week, and then the same thing applies. Body composition changes? Yes, no changes. No, go to step 2. Are you down 0.5 to 1.5 pounds? Yes, no changes. No, now you do cardio increase, right? So we could do 2 things with cardio. We could increase the minutes per session, or we could increase the frequency per week. So the biggest caveat behind this, and I'm going to put this in here as well, is no need to do more than 5 times weekly cardio. Why? It's because we need that inflammation reduction. We need your body to reduce inflammation. So 5 times a week, would typically be max that we put a client on for overall cardio, because those 2 days rest go a lot better and they are a lot more impactful for reducing overall cortisol levels than if it was we were just to, bang our head through it, right? So we want to either one, raise the amount per week to 5 or raise the minutes per cardio per session, right? And we can do that simultaneously, right? So one week we might do 5 time sessions. The next week, increase, we might do 35. But we want to kind of follow this like structure, right? Is that we want to be able to do this. Is that once we do get this and we go back down to this step 2, then we go all the way back up to step 1 again, right? Where we wait a week and then we see no changes on your physical composition. No, go to step 2. Are you down 0.5, 1.5? Yes, no changes. No, we'll go back and reduce the calories or increase the cardio. And you can do this and like simultaneously as time goes on, as you hit a fat loss plateau. But keep in mind, a lot of guys will go wrong is because they will jump the gun on this. They don't have the patience to change one thing once per week, and they don't have the correlated output of data being accumulated to understand what needs to be changed. And that's why I'm trying to lay it out for you as clearly and as depicted as possible, is that the 2 things you want to look at: is your body composition changing? Yes, don't change it. Is your weight down 0.5 to 1.5 times from the previous week? Yes, don't change it. If it is, then we make the changes, but we make minuscule changes. We make 100 calorie changes, and then we make a slight cardio increase. But we don't want to do both, because if we do both, we don't know what is having the bigger driver of impact in your overall cut. Let's take this in the context, we lower 25 grams of carbohydrates and you lose 2 pounds that week. We now know that the carbohydrates have a very strong stimulus on your cut. So we want to lean into that. So yes, next week we might raise cardio, but we know that when we do reduce food intake, that it will have an immense amount of benefit. So let's talk about protein, carbs, and fats and what we can change within this. So overall, the goal is to try to keep carbohydrates as high as possible. And the reason being is that carbohydrates will reduce, basically, optimize leptin. And leptin is satiety. The more carbohydrates you have under your belt, the more satiated you're going to feel, the more energy you're going to have, the better pumped you're going to be in the gym, the more reduction of inflammation that you're going to have. So the goal should be to keep carbohydrates as high as possible. So when we start to get to the 250 range of carbohydrates, we can change the other macronutrients slightly. Not very much. And I would never say lean on it, because the major driving factor within your overall macronutrients is going to be reducing carbohydrates. But in a chance, we can reduce fat intake to 50. I've gotten guys to 50 fat before, and it works beautifully, because 10 grams less of fat not only is 90 calories, but when you start to lower fat, you start to free up digestion. Your digestion burns at a higher rate, because fat would, for instance, has a very low thermic effect. It takes very long for your body to digest fat. So a simple 10-gram fat decrease can go a long, long ways. But I wouldn't lower fat until we get to the point where we're mid-200 carbohydrates. And then within your overall protein, as we start to get down within the 200 grams of carbohydrates, we can actually reduce protein slightly to 175, right? Because as you start to lose weight, we're still abiding by that 1 pound per body weight goal. As you start to lose weight, you can reduce your protein intake ever so slightly to keep carbohydrates high. And why do we do this? Because carbohydrates are what's called protein sparring, right? Carbohydrates put protein in the correct places, and they act as a transportation mechanism to put protein in the right places. So having more carbohydrates and just very slightly less amount of protein intake will actually go a long ways. And the goal here is that what we want to optimize for within your cutting phase is that once you start to reduce carbohydrates and you start to get down in those carbohydrates and you start to diminish carbohydrates ever so slightly, I want you to put your goal weight as your protein intake. So if your goal weight is 175, once you get down within that 200 grams of carbohydrates range, try to lower your protein to match your overall goal body weight within body structure, right? Because we want to be structuring our protein intake 1 to 1.2 times per body weight, yes. But when you're in a cutting phase, we try to maximize it for 1 to 1.2 times lean muscle tissue, right? So the biggest changes, the only changes we would make in protein and fats is 25 grams left of protein in some cases and 10 grams left of fat in some cases. But the majority driver is going to be carbohydrates. We want to try to savor these carbohydrates as high as possible, because the more carbohydrates you have under your system, the easier that it's going to be to maintain, right? So we can even go into changes if we do not see changes, hypothetically, after both of these get decreased, we could try to add a refeed day, right? So if no changes after step 2 and 3, and I wouldn't say that you need to do a refeed for at least 8 to 10 weeks. There should be no refeeds within 8 to 10 weeks of starting your cut. You don't need it. But once you start to get down within that 2,000 to 2,400 calorie range, you can start to understand your body and key factors and bodily cues that understand when to make a refeed. And this is what we teach our clients, is that some weeks you'll check in and your body will feel a little bit tired and a little bit fatigued. Hunger will be high, energy will be low. And if that is the case, if hunger is high and energy is low, then you are in range for what's called a correlated carbohydrate refeed, which is going to improve your satiety, improve your hunger, and improve your energy levels, right? And so how you do a structured refeed correctly is you do 1 day of higher carbohydrates, 100 more grams of carbohydrates. If this works and you see weight and body composition change within the next few days, add a second refeed, right? Maybe the following week, on the same day you did the refeed last week, do another 100 carbohydrate refeed. And if you see the exact same changes in body composition over the next couple of days after implementing a refeed, you can even try the next week to do a small diet break, right? So the biggest practice what we can do within overall refeeds that I teach to my higher level clients is that after a refeed, what we can do to structure your macronutrients is we can do this. We can give you a 100 carbohydrate refeed and then drop calories. Right? So what does this do? What is the purpose of this and why do we implement this? Because when you add 100 carbohydrates and then you lower carbohydrates, you lower food intake, the following days after your refeed, your BMR will be slightly higher following that refeed. And if you have less calories under your belt and your body is burning carbohydrates at a higher rate because of the refeed, in a lot of cases, you can break through a fat loss plateau. Because you got to think about, let's think about this logically. When you give the body more carbohydrates, it's more food, time to burn more food. For the next correlated couple days, it's anticipating you getting more food. And so we can actually do a structured calorie decrease after a carbohydrate refeed, which will allow us to break through fat loss plateaus and really see amazing body composite changes. But understanding when to do this and understanding bodily cues is the first thing I want to teach you guys on my channel is understand the bodily cues of when you feel like you're actively walking through sand, you have immense brain fog and slight digestive issues. That is good key telltale signs and bodily cues that you're up for grabs for a good refeed. And if the refeed works, if you see digestion start to clear, energy start to go up, and basically just overall hunger start to lower, you can now know, okay, I'm probably under eating a little bit too high, and maybe raise the carbohydrates up 50 grams or even 100 grams for the course of a full week to give a full diet break, right? And we do this with our clients all the time. Well, for a week straight, when they get pretty low in calories, and I would say under 2,000 calories, is we would give them a week straight with 100 more grams of carbohydrates a day. That's 400 calories per day, 21,000 calories per week. What we can do with that is understand how the body reacts. Is the body gaining weight or is it still losing weight? If in a lot of cases this would be 95% true, if you were in a chance where we put you up for a diet break, and 95% of the chances, we give a 7-day refeed of 100 grams of carbohydrates and we see new low weigh-ins all through that week. So what do we understand about that then? What is that data telling us? It's telling us that we're over dieting too hard. We need to pull back a little bit of cardio and we need to add a little bit of carbohydrates to reduce a lot of this inflammation that's actually occurring. So what this looks like from a higher level perspective within metabolic priming and then getting into a fat loss phase is as you start off with a higher amount of calories after metabolic priming phase, lower the calories to start off, maybe 75 grams of cardio decrease, or calories decrease within carbohydrates. Put cardio at 25 minutes, wait 2 to 3 weeks. Do not make a change. Stay consistent on the macronutrients. And then the next week, after your body starts to actually diminish, you're not down 0.5 pounds, you see no body composition changes, lower it another 100. Yep, another 25 grams of carbohydrates. Wait another week. Still no changes? Cool. Add 10 more minutes of cardio. Then we do the same thing again. Wait another week, right? Are we down 0.5 pounds? No. Are we down, our body composition improving? No. Okay, we can lower this a little bit more, right? Maybe 200 calories. But the goal should be, like the decrease in carbohydrates should be anywhere from 25 to 50 grams per week. You don't need to go well more than that. You know, within carbohydrates, 25 to 50 gram decrease per week is all you need, right? And then this stay consistent on these overall macros, and just understand that make decisions based upon a weekly perspective, not a daily perspective. Because in a lot of cases, when you're inside of the cut and you get frustrated that you're not seeing progress each day, it's hard to look at stuff on a daily basis and look at stuff on a weekly basis and make weekly data-driven decisions. And that's exactly what we do. I teach our clients how to look at things from a weekly perspective, saying, okay, what do we need to do this week? Do we need to lower food? Okay, let's do it. Do we need to raise carb? We lowered food last week. Should we raise cardio? Okay, let's do it. Are we hitting a point where we're under 2,000 calories and we might need to have a refeed here soon? Yes. Okay, let's keep a lookout for overall body fatigue and energy levels start to decline. And these are the bodily cues that we teach our clients, all right? But this is like basically how we structure everything for each and one of our individual clients. And like, you know, the results speak for themselves. We have guys down 50 pounds looking absolutely shredded. And we've got like men above 50. This is a firefighter in our program. His name's Doug. We're doing a client testimonial with him on this Thursday. So check it out Friday. But this is Doug eating 500 calories more on the right than he is on the left. He's down 20 pounds, almost 25 pounds on the right, eating more food because we primed his metabolism and then we shredded off the body fat. So if you like this type of video, like, comment, and subscribe. I do these videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the purpose of teaching my channel how to reach a next level physique, because you guys have been crushing it with the engagement. So like, comment, and subscribe in this video, and let me know what you guys want to see next, because this channel is designed for you, the viewers, to get to a next level physique. And if you think this is good stuff, just imagine what my paid for clients actually do get. So like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.